Very excited about our afternoon. We have a number of great speakers. I'm going to be kind of succinct, introducing Pierre Tessier, who is the Director General for Project Management Services line, Real Property Services for Public Services and Procurement Canada. Pierre has got a tight schedule. He's got a hard stop at 12:35. But just real briefly, Pierre he's spent his career in a number of different areas of government. He worked for the Canadian Department of National Defence, the Royal Canadian Navy, and he's currently managing a very large team of project managers that work on national projects across the country, as well as managing about $3.5 billion worth of projects ongoing in the capital region. How did I do, Pierre? Is that pretty good?
Sounds right. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, we can hear you and we can see you. So I'm going to turn it over, and if we can finish with enough time for Q&A, we're going to do that. But please, just like in the morning, there's in the chat panel, add your questions, and we'll try to get to those questions if we have time. So thank you very much, and it's all yours, Pierre.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for having me today as well. Really appreciate the invite, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of our vision with the group. So I'll try to explain some of the basics as I go through the presentation that we've got here for you today, and hopefully that'll spark some discussion and questions as we go through. So Real Property Services is one of the federal experts in real property, policy, procurement, delivery, and technical oversight. My main focus over the last year, as Tom has alluded to, has mainly been advancing projects in the NCA region. Items like the Carling campus out west of Ottawa, the West Memorial Building in the center town, the rehabilitation of 875 Heron, and then bridges and dams, and a multitude of other projects, as well as the national oversight on project management. So our main mission is really, and the presentation will talk about this today, is how do we digitize our business, and how do we become more virtual, which is very topical in this, not only this day and age, but as in the phase of society that we're living in today, as everyone is working from home in current situations. And so it really points to how do we become more agile with our digitization of our business. And you'll say, well, what do you mean by that, right? But it really goes from leveraging basic data that we have across our systems and integrating that data so that we can better visualize it, understand the impact of that data, and also lead us to better decision making. So that's the premise of the discussion today, and where we'll go to. So some of the examples around real property the management framework. I just want to explain a bit the vision for those of you who might not be familiar with how real property within the federal family works. Yes, and I do see we do have a poll and questions that we're asking you to fill out as you go through. The questions are actually loading up on my screen right now, and so I'm clicking through this. Apologies for looking away and looking in, but I'm adjusting, and I'm not the technical guy. So back to over the last year, federal departments which are responsible for the stewardship of Crown assets and have been asked to develop a departmental real property framework, and it has 5 key principles. And one of the main principles that we've added is really around data management and quality. So this is now becoming an evolution where we're moving towards that data management quality, as we also look at not only the technical aspects of maintaining buildings and building buildings. This is something that I'd say 10, 15 years ago, folks knew, but they weren't really paying as much attention to it. Now it's become prime and really in one of the things that we look forward to. As leaders in the federal real property space, RPS has also become a development of suite around policy instruments related to asset management and how do we deliver projects around buildings that really look to harmonize efforts to transition from legacy documentation and CAD type drawings and paper-based to more of a BIM and data-based focused intelligence. And we'll talk more about that in a few slides. But aside from the requirement from updating our policy, there's also focus in terms of how do we actually implement this in practice. So we've been working some time with on the Smart Building Initiative as well as BIM, a BIM strategy. And once married with our enterprise systems and our geographical information system, this is really a framework to support how we leverage the digital twin, which and making decisions based on data. So the evolution of the RPS branch in the next slide really gives a vision at the federal level as both the service provider for and real property experts responsible for setting the service standards and developing the policies and practices. So some of these are listed here, but we had to reevaluate what digital actually meant for us, what it means, what does it mean within our core mandate. So really, nothing about the mission or the mandate has changed. It's how we are evolving to deliver services and develop and manage responsibilities on behalf of government and Canadians. So our mission has always been to deliver high quality services and programs that meet the needs of federal organizations and to ensure sound stewardship on behalf of Canadians. So what does digital mean in that context, right? When you're providing services and you want to ensure sound stewardship of funds and services. And so what that means is really, how do we explore innovative technologies? How do we adapt to evolving practices within industry? And how do we meet expectations now and into the future? So we want our strategy to be fairly flexible. So important for assets and core activities that fall within our real property group. It's services that we provide to Canadians and the federal government. And to us, digital has a significant role to play in that aspect. In terms of our data management strategy, on slide 5, the evolution of decision making in real property means making decisions faster, with less people, less documentation. But as you can see, we're spread out across a number of regions within the real property family. So we have assets and buildings, whether they're bridges and buildings across Canada. And so ensuring that we're leveraging the digitization of that information and being able to compare it together and look at it is extremely important. So one of that would include the mandate for quality and quantity of data to support those decisions. So ensuring that owners of the data across the country have set standards and known entities of what data we're actually using for decision making is part of the strategy in terms of actually implementing. The next slide really talks about the vision for data management and how we can support that vision. So to build in the right direction as part of the group that we're working with is to create a new and more flexible data governance and management model for PSPC. And so like any business today, PSPC will need both a data warehouse and a data lake approach. So we don't want to marry ourselves to one approach and then not have that flexibility. And the transition sometimes is taking decades of old information and processes to a new structure. And doing this, as you can imagine, in your own organizations is quite challenging. It's a new way of doing things, and it takes a lot of effort to get there. What's good for the enterprise data, though, isn't always good for the asset data, and so we can't seem in our organization right now. We can't handle building and infrastructure data the way we have been our financial data, and so although they're inseparable, we want both of them connected. They're structured very differently. And so they need different data management strategies entirely. So the slide 7 really starts to show how we've been working on the development of a spatial data warehouse where records of information can be maintained, and then a project data server where project stakeholders can work together in a common environment that is probably a bit more suitable than just the data itself. And this allows for exchanging technical information, things like drawings, models, asset databases, while also fostering capabilities around collaboration, creation, editing, issues management, also a bit of simulation of scenarios as we go through, whether it's a project that we're delivering or in the design phase of a project with a client. Slide 8 and 9, yeah, slide 9. So in all our efforts to bring this vision into reality over the next few years, I'd say the biggest gap in our legacy data management approach was the lack of digital project and asset delivery requirements. So we didn't put it into our requirements 20 years ago. So we're lacking that data today. And so we were also maybe putting it as requirements, but we were collecting it as paper, right? And data. So we weren't really responsive or aligned to where industry was going at the time. And so although we're not new to BIM, obviously there were efforts in the late 2008, 2009 timeframe, which was one of our first major BIM projects. But we realized that resources, technology, and our collective maturity in understanding what data we wanted from that exercise really wasn't successful, and it was partially based on the complexity of the project that we picked for then. But when you fast forward to 2012, and we worked with D&D on the delivery of the Carlin campus, which we implemented BIM, and as well as the parliamentary precinct branch that worked on the government's conference center. So as of January 2020, we have approximately 8% of our portfolio digitized, and the numbers largely represents projects in the National Capital Region, as most of the buildings that are owned are often in this area as well. Our intention moving forward is really to find innovate and economical ways to collect data and develop quality needed for an enterprise level BIM for all assets that we own as a start point. Obviously, we'll look for other forms of ownerships as it evolves, and also as our partners evolve in different industries. But BIM will now be a core part of our data management and program delivery strategy. So very early on, all projects that are being looked at today have that BIM component, which has been a huge way forward. So slide 10 really talks to how do we support a national BIM implementation strategy as we need to compare apples to apples. So it's great that we're collecting all this data and BIM, but how do we actually make use of it? And so without the necessary open standards, we can't compare the data easily from one asset to another, or for that matter, one jurisdiction to another, or one region to another. So there's definitely a need to combine or ensure that we can leverage the data across all the regions in order to make better decision making. So in that spirit, PSPC has recently become the administrator of a committee that's called the Canadian Mirror Committee. This committee is responsible for organizing and digitizing information about buildings and civil engineering works, and has a multitude of published international standards ready for Canada to adopt to its needs, and many more that are coming forward. So obviously there's a lot of collaboration required to get to here, although PSPC is the administrator. There's quite of all the provinces, territories, some municipalities will be leveraged to develop national standards committee that will develop Canada's first asset infrastructure information framework. So, bold aspirations, but that's the vision as we move forward. And obviously, PSPC is collaborating very closely with other groups, not only the provinces and territories, but also other government departments, Department of National Defense, the Federal Real Property Advisory Committee, and Building Smart Canada. So there's a number of other groups that are involved, and it's partly due to them that we're making this type of progress. Slide 11 really gets to, in addition of the topic of standardization, so that we can leverage the data we're collecting, we intend to invest a significant effort in the professional development of its real property community. So very key that our folks have the right training and maintain that expertise within the federal government to work on these things. And we're working very closely with Treasury Board, with the School of Public Service, with D&D, in order to have a platform where that training is available. So obviously that'll support federal departments when they move from their paper-based to data-driven workflows. So obviously as they transition, but also provide a common set of requirements for suppliers and service providers. So hopefully that'll evolve the thinking around how do we work together. And so obviously to accomplish this, there's tons of information that needs to be developed in terms of the curriculum, etc. But extremely important that we maintain that knowledge level so that folks actually are aware of the things that need to happen in order to make this successful. So a few more practical examples. So slide 12 gives you an example of BIM implementation at work within RPS. We'll take a look at the West Memorial Building. That's part of a Supreme Court program of work. So it's a larger program of work. If you've ever been in Ottawa, it's at the corner of Lyon and I want to say Sparks, but Sparks in the back there, but Wellington, sorry. And so it's fairly significant building, has a lot of heritage character to the building. We're doing the major rehab of all the mechanical, electrical, and safety systems, modernization of networks, safety and equipment, and some major seismic upgrades. So obviously, being a large construction project, the project was a good opportunity to leverage some of the work we're doing with BIM. So focusing on the essentials, the modeling effort focused on uses that would benefit basic BIM return on investment for PSPC. So obviously reducing deficiencies upfront, improving coordination and quality throughout the aggressive schedule, but also helping us communicate with our clients on their needs. That's been another big attribute. Slide 13 really starts showing that existing conditions and design modeling and into construction modeling, the benefits with the project had already been realized. So key discoveries such as there was overpouring of slabs and concrete structures early on, as compared to the as-built or as-found documentation. So when we were looking at purely the documentation, we had different impressions of the building and what we would need to upgrade the seismic. But once we got into this type of modeling and what we actually found, we were able to address those flaws early on in our designs and address those type of items so that we can move quicker within our construction. I believe you're looking at the right slide. So you can actually see here that a cross section of the building, there were 2 courtyards. So you can see we're making use of those courtyards, and the simple things that have to be done with visualization from BIM continue to be a really great communication tool, but also ability to understand the needs of our client as we go through this design work and construction. Next slide. So this just gives you another view of the interior of one of the courtyards. So this will be the main hall for the Supreme Court for a number of years as they transition to this building. And you can see the second on the right there. You can see the chandelier and the lights above, or the roof that'll be installed. Piece, which the concept is very similar to the East Memorial building, which is a twin building right next door. Question, next slide. So the service desk of the future. So as I said earlier, BIM was a big missing piece in our DNA, our overall strategy around management, and our vision for and where RPS needed to go. The calling on the key information stakeholders within the branch and the department, especially during the preliminary planning of how we're going to set the vision, RPS began to validate and to convert a lot of the data and implementing a smart building strategy throughout the portfolio. Next slide. And as the efforts fall into alignment, the enterprise view on data information has begun to create some linkages between all these pieces. And so how we define the outcome or handover expected from a data perspective, PSPC will ensure the data packages required by the stakeholders throughout the process and through the enterprise systems are provided semi-automated and high quality. So you can see that the missing links in the previous slide are really starting to come together as we start calling it the digital handover. So literally digitizing the process so that when we do something in one part of the process, it can be used down in the next step of the process or in the management of the building or asset in this case. So the primary method for PSPC to do a lot of this is defining those information requirements for key activities during those big steps in the process. So again, your project delivery, your operations and maintenance, and the procurement of services throughout those two processes. Next slide. So leveraging the digital twin. So the key digital twin technologies are being piloted and implemented throughout our portfolio. It's a wealth of data that will be linked to both BIM and master data. There's over 100 buildings in PSPC's portfolio that have implemented smart building sensors in one or more key building systems. So advancing automation has been a common practice within PSPC projects for a number of years, but now through the integration with BIM and smart building technology, building automation systems have both the spatial context and the real-time data to improve and make situational adjustments to existing building operating patterns. This presents a level of flexibility in operations and performance that our portfolio hasn't been able to achieve in the past. And so by combining the real-time sensors with that data and the business context throughout the systems, we're able to support government objectives and programs such as GHG reductions, health and safety, and also GC workplace. So part of an example of that is knowing early that we're having issues in buildings, not just through service calls, which is a very reactive approach. A lot of our sensors in the buildings were actually able to tell early if there are issues within the building. So you take something as simple as it's very hot in the building in the summer, our sensors are picking it up. We're able to adjust even before the client's able to pick up the phone and have those calls in. And then, you can imagine the impact in the process that happens throughout that chain of events when it can be adapted early on, and we know exactly which floor, which location something is happening and how to adjust it. So it's really helping us become more flexible with our clients and provide better services. Question? Perfect. So if you're looking for more info or if you have any questions, the The email for the team is included on this slide at the bottom, and so you can always follow up if we don't have time to answer the questions today, or if you just want to get in contact and want to know more information. I truly believe that sharing knowledge and sharing our experiences and lessons learned through these processes are key to our success. And that's the end of the presentation. And so, s'il y a des questions, if there are questions, I'm available to answer. But thank you very much for listening today, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for participating. I'm not going to be able to keep up with you if you want to do Q&A in French, though. We had a couple questions come in through the chat box here. I'm just going to go to the publish site. So one of the questions was from Peter D. You mentioned about developing standards and whatnot, but I guess he was looking for clarification because he thought there was a Public Services Procurement Canada BIM standard already published, maybe in draft, or were you aware of that? Or
yeah, I think I believe there was. I think there is an earlier draft standard that was published, and I'm sure there's ongoing discussions with stakeholders. But this is to the committee's forming with newer members, right? And the evolution, ensuring that we're looking at the evolution. I talked about generations of BIM earlier. So as this evolves, we want to ensure that the standard is as well updated and consistent with where all the stakeholders are going. So this is more an opportunity to update those standards today, but also making sure that we have engagement and the right folks at the table to make sure that we're aligned as well. It's not about just putting standards, it's about working with folks to make sure that the standards meet everyone's needs.
Yeah, you got to build consensus across a lot of different regions and a lot of different user groups, and those documents need to work for everyone. So I'm sure it's an onerous task managing that change across the entire country.
Yeah.
So there's another question here. How was as-built and as-found data gathered in order to create the BIM model for the existing building? So I don't know if you have specific knowledge around the examples that you showed, but I would imagine LiDAR. Or...
I don't. Yeah, I don't have that technical exactly what they use, but I can expand on it. I don't have that technical piece, but I've been heavily involved in those projects.
Yeah.
Specifically around the interaction with the client using those technologies, and it's been a game changer, I'll call it, to be able to demonstrate and visualize what the client will eventually get, compared to just talking to a client for a year where they have to imagine a space, or you show them a few pictures. It's completely different. The experience that we're having with our clients, leveraging the technology, is a game changer in our business.
They utilize for communication to facilitate getting to a decision ultimately.
Correct, and also decisions. We're getting quicker decisions, and I would say it's fostering discussions earlier than it did. So it's uncovering things that in a traditional process where we didn't have it, we would only find out about a third into either into construction or very far from very late in design phase. Whereas now we're seeing that up front, and we're able to have the hard conversations early, depending on what the client requirements are. And to me, it's saving us a lot of time in construction, money, and schedule.
Yeah. It's an enormous value proposition if you can make decisions and start planning from real information rather than a best guess at what's behind the wall or what that exact scenario is. You can make decisions right out of the gate that will work on the job site. So it's a huge advantage to have that data available.
Correct.
There was a question here. What restrictions has data resilience had with cloud platforms? I'm not sure what that one means exactly.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm thinking of my knowledge in that area is a bit dated, but I know that the government itself is moving towards the use of cloud more and more. I know there are offerings that we leverage today, Is
Hey,
it
you mentioned you're using SAP, correct? So that's one of your core products.
correct? Correct. That's one of our core products today, but it's still server based. It's still obviously the government as a whole, not just the BIM platforms, but the government as a whole has obviously a series of protection and items that it goes through. But I know as a whole, government is moving towards how do we leverage cloud better, right, and smarter. And I think once we, I know there's been some movement more on, I'll call it more general platforms, less specified, not as specific as BIM itself, right? But as these type of things start opening up and we're able to do more exploration with cloud-based platforms, I think it will actually move us a lot quicker down the road.
Yeah, there are some huge advantages, speed and disbursement of information to the field, et cetera, using these cloud platforms. But then you also have to think about your data governance and what do you want to keep behind your firewalls? What do you want to keep on servers in the country? I mean, it comes up all the time. And it's a bit of a trade-off between the convenience of having access to this information whenever you need it and giving it to who needs it versus keeping it secure, keeping it safe. And making sure that it stays intact and controlling rights too on who can adjust those data sets, right? You've got many assets. You got to be careful about how those data sets get maintained.
Correct. And I think you just explained very well the process, I believe, that we're all going through as we go from, our internal servers. And I know a lot of companies are actually going through it as well, right? As they're going through their own IT piece and looking at cloud. In the longer term. Yeah, definitely.
So you said you had a hard stop at 12:35. We're at 12:34. So I just want to make sure that I say thank you very much for making the time and jumping in last minute. We did make a switch at the last minute there. And I really appreciate you spending the time with us. And maybe you'd be available to answer some more questions by email, potentially if we gather them up. But I thought it was really informative, and I'm glad that the government's taking a leading role here. Do you want to go over the polls at all?
It'd be great just to see where we're at. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure if I'm able to.
The polls will stay open,
go.
I think, beyond the presentation here, but
good. And I know this is interesting. There's some diversity in the opinions, right?
Yeah, it does come up often that I guess the community wants to make it easier to roll out these new initiatives and initiate digitization within businesses. They want to see the government mandated, right? But then there's a debate about whether or not that's the right approach. So it's kind of always interesting talking to the public clients on that subject to see where they think that's a great idea to push it forward, or if they want the private sector to kind of move forward at the pace that innovation wants to move.
And I think for us, probably the takeaway, especially as I look at the first question, right? I think this is a journey, right? It's an evolution. And I think taking a leadership role, even if we don't have all the things in place around us, I think and bringing stakeholders and taking stakeholders' views in place as we set a group vision, I think is important. And so regardless of how we, whether we're the mandator, the leader, the facilitator, I think we need to be a little bit of all of that as we evolve. And I think it'll be key to get everyone on board as we see that vision. So as I jump off, I just want to thank everyone for joining today, and hope you enjoyed the information. And I really appreciate all the participation. So merci beaucoup.